All right, guys, I want to welcome you to this week's podcast and having a little bit of technical difficulty. So give me one sec. I want to welcome you to this week's podcast. And today we're going to be talking specifically about your top 10 must have business hacks for business owners. And before we get into this, I want to call out kind of who this is for. Well, obviously it's for the business owners, but one of the things is people often ask me, like, what are your must-have business hacks? And, I wanted to make a list of this because these are things that I've really learned along the way and experienced. And these are some very valuable lessons and very valuable things that I've learned. But they're also things that you can begin implementing today. You don't have to wait, for a certain period of time, but these are things that you can actually start implementing today as we are going through this. And so, if you're a business owner or potentially want to be at some point in your life, this is a great opportunity, for you to implement these right away. So number one is to be first. And I remember early on, about 14 years ago, I went to a conference, and it was one of the first conferences I'd went to, and it was for fitness. And a guy by the name of Thomas Plummer talked about, which is actually the first two hacks that I'm going to give you. So number one was to be first. And as he talked about this, I'm like, be first. And he's like, yeah, be first. So people who want to be first are constantly working towards improving themselves. And they know something that no other person does, or they're the first to offer something that no other person does. So in the context of what I was learning back then, it was kind of when functional training was really rolling around and just starting to get into the fitness industry, not necessarily, but it was more of like the personal training studio model, and how people were still kind of I mean, this is like 15, 16 years ago. So they're still in the machines and things like that. But the idea was to be first. And so we were one of the first to really roll out this functional training model for adult population. And it was more of like kind of an functional athlete model and system that we were doing to help someone lose weight, but they were able to move better. And at the same time, one of the other things that we were able to do at that time was roll out boot camp, which, we're talking about 15 years ago. So we were like one of the first in our area to begin doing that. We were one of the first to offer, when we started doing 6-week challenges. This is about 7 or 8 years ago, but we were really the first in our area to start offering many of those things. And that was what really made us successful. Now, for you, whether you have a brick and mortar business, whether you have a virtual business, you want to look at ways that you can be first, offer something that no other person does, or be the first at offering something that no one else does. The other thing is to be different. And being different means that we are constantly innovating. And I remember the two things he said was like, listen, be first and be different. Obviously, if we want to be like everybody else, we're just going to blend into the crowd. And so when it comes to business, we want to be able to innovate, do things differently than everybody else, have a different delivery model than everybody else, and be unique, because that uniqueness separates us from everybody else, from anyone else. And it's really a great way to decipher you from the competition. And so, if everybody's offering, let's just use the analogy of functional training, we could be the first to say, oh, listen, we do functional weight loss or functional athletic training for adults. And that was some of the ways that we were deciphering it. And then I remember once everybody started to, do boot camp and kind of catch up to us in that, then we turned it into training camp, and we named it something completely different when everybody caught up to us in the 6-week challenge. Then, or I'm sorry, yeah, 6-week challenge, we started going to the 42-day challenge or the 30-day challenge, and just changing it up and being different, constantly innovating ahead of everybody else. And those were the ways that we were able to be successful. And so, look at ways in your business, make sure that um, you're looking around in your industry at what are things that people are doing, not doing, what are ways that you can innovate, because those are things that are really going to separate you from the both. And to finish the story on this, it was like, hey, if you can be first, you can be really successful in business. If you can be different, you'll be really successful in difference. But if you'll be both of those in your business, you'll dominate your industry, you'll dominate your community when it comes to what you're doing. And so whether that be virtual or brick and mortar, those are two of the most powerful things that I learned, man, 15 years ago in the training industry. Now, one of the other things is obviously, this is kind of a no-brainer, but I think, when it comes to how we show up in business, consistency is more important than anything else. And I'm going to talk specifically about marketing. Consistently marketing is going to be more important than any one message, any one offer, any one challenge that you ever put out into the marketplace. People will buy from you because of your consistency more than anything else. And so, I've spent a lot of money on marketing, whether it be on Facebook ads, whether it be, in other areas. And the one area that I always see people tell me that, hey, the number one thing that I see from you is consistency. And I want to learn how to do that. And oftentimes that's how, if I'm showing up consistently in my business, people see that, they respect it, and they want to work with you because they see that inside of you. The other thing is, there's so much right now. There's so many coaches out there, so many consultants. And I personally believe that having one of those at all times is crucial to your business. But I also want to say that this one thing is, no one coach, no one consultant will save your business, because if they save it, you will constantly need them to save it from that point forward. And so no one will save you or your business. It must be you, and it must be you doing the work. And if a coach or consultant does it, now you have just empowered them to do that for you. And your expectation is to have someone like them, your coach, your consultant, always do that. And so make sure that you realize that no matter who you hire, you still have to do the work. And yes, coaches will give you shortcuts. Consultants will definitely help you. But ultimately, you have to always remember that you are the solution. You are the problem and solution to your business. And no one will ultimately save you or your business except you. And I've had a ton of coaches help me a great deal, a ton of consultants help me a great deal in business, but ultimately I still had to do the work, and so will you. And the other part of this, which is what we're going to get into, is you are always the problem and the solution as your business. I think we have a tendency, first, we can blame employees. If we have them, if we don't have them, we can blame clients. We could blame coaches, we could blame consultants, but keep in mind that if you're the business owner, no matter what someone does to you, coach, consultant, client or employee, you are the problem and you are the solution. And so you hired them, you fire them, you found them, you brought them on your team, you brought them into your business, regardless of what they've done to you, how bad they've treated you, how many clients they sold from you. You are always the problem and you are always the solution. And because any other way, if my employee is the problem, that means they're the solution. And that's a very disempowering place to be. If my client is a problem and my client's the solution, and I can't take full responsibility for that. And so keep in mind that no matter what happens in your business, no matter, we can't control everything that happens to it, but we can always control how we respond, how we react to it, and becoming the solution of it. And I think that is one of the toughest lessons that you'll ever learn in business, because, I've had people in my business before come in and literally give them a full clientele within, 6 months of working for us, and literally walk away, start their own business from the clients we gave them. And at the time, I mean, they were the problem and they were the solution. And in that was a huge problem and a huge thing for me to deal with for a long time, and a lot of stress. And I realized, man, did I ever get back what I put out in stress? And the time that it took to realize that, like, hey, maybe they were a problem, but they weren't the problem, because ultimately I hired them, I gave them the clients. And so it was really, me having to have a better process for that, having to have better ways to avoid that altogether. And these are just things that you learn when you're growing a business. And if I wouldn't have learned that, that wouldn't have been a valuable lesson for me. And so today, as I read that, I talk to business owners all the time where it's like, man, this guy did this to me, this employee did this, and I'm like, listen, who hired them? They're like, me, but you don't understand. And I'm like, well, who hires them? Who fires them? And who creates the systems that operates in them? Who gives them access to clients? And it always will come back to you. And so remember that you will always be the problem and the solution. If you want to be a business owner, that's what it ultimately rolls down to. So the next part of this, which it goes hand in hand. And as I'm walking through this, I'm like, man, if I would have had these 15, 16 years ago, it would have saved me a lot of time, energy, and stress. And so this next one is take full responsibility and accountability for everything that happens in your business. And so whether it happens with employees, clients, there's been times where I've literally, blown up at clients, and I've had to take responsibility for it and just say, hey, that's not how I want to show up in my business. There's been other times where I've had to kick people out of my business because they were affecting the energy of my business. There's been times where I had to fire employees because they were disruptive. They were just not a fit. And so I have to take, as a business owner, full responsibility, full accountability for everything that happens, no matter if employees do it, clients do it, whatever. I have to take that responsibility on myself. And I'm the only one that can do that. The other side of this is constantly growing. And I really think that if we can constantly grow as a business owner, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, it will always keep us from being stagnant and staying the same. I think one of the things that happens in business is we stop growing, we get comfortable, and then we stay the same. And then our clients begin to leave. Our clients begin to get comfortable. They may stay in your business, and what'll happen is if they stay the same, that means you will stay the same. And I think this was a really powerful lesson I learned was as I changed. Some of my clients, this is back when I owned my gym, is when I changed, it forced other people that were employees, it forced other clients to change, and it forced them to either move out or choose in to go all in with us. And it forced them out of their comfort zone. But when I stay the same, the people around me will often stay the same, and it gets to be very comfortable. And I think that's one of the places as a business owner that we begin to actually lose ourselves in that process, is when we're not constantly growing, when we're not pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. And then what ends up happening is our clients start controlling the changes that we make because it's dictated on them and their comfort zone. See, when I push myself out of my comfort zone, my business begins to change. My ideal client begins to change. My delivery method begins to change. My messaging begins to change. And I have to constantly upgrade those things. And I have to constantly give people an opportunity to choose, to stay in their comfort zone or to get out of it. And the more I can do that, and right, as I'm listening to myself, some clients will choose to leave because they don't want to grow. Some employees will choose to leave because they don't want to grow. But, you know what, on the other side of that, some will choose to leave because you're not growing, and some will choose to stay the same because you are growing or not growing. And these are ways that you have to understand that you got to be in charge of your growth. You got to be in charge of being uncomfortable, because if you stay stagnant, you stay the same, everybody around you in your business is going to be that, and it's gonna impact your business in a major way. And then it's going to be very hard to get out of that place because everybody wants to fight for comfort, and very few people will fight for change. And so the more people we have fighting for comfort, the harder it is to get our community, the harder it is to get our employees to change and our culture to change. And then number 8, have a coach or a consultant at all times. And believe it or not, we all have blind spots. I have blind spots. Everybody has blind spots, especially if you're a business owner. And so you want to make sure that you have someone in your corner, a coach, consultant, who's willing to call you out. And I will say that, like, they have to be willing to call you out on your blind spots, because there's a lot of coaches that won't do that. And those are the coaches that, that are not typically the ones that I want to work with. Like, I want to work with someone who's actually going to confront me on the blind spots that I have so that I can challenge myself to move forward. Because if I don't do that, I'm going to stay the same and my business is going to stay the same. And that's not why I'm in business. And so make sure that you have someone in your corner who, and I think it's a coach or consultant, you have to be paying them. And that has to be their main focus, is like, listen, we're going to make sure we work on your blind spots, because otherwise, you're going to get stagnant. You're going to stay the same. And that's the simplest way that we can start to kind of burn our business down. Now, number 9 is to learn how to leverage your time and strengths. And so I always think about, sure, I could be one of the strongest guys in the world. And let's just say, say I was benching 500 pounds. And that was one of the strongest, people in the world. But in business, we can be one of the strongest people in business, but we're never as strong as a team. And so just like, me saying, okay, well, listen, I can deadlift 500 pounds by myself, but imagine if I had a team that we could deadlift, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 pounds together. And here I am still trying to deadlift that 500 pounds by myself. And so where we really want to do is leverage our time, leverage to work on our strengths, because, one person working 8 to 10 hours is worth one person. But if I have, 24 to 32 hours of work getting done in a day, now I'm 3 to 4xing my productivity. And if I'm able to be in my strengths doing that, now I'm actually maximizing my time, I'm maximizing my strength, and I'm maximizing my business because I understand those things. And too many times, we have maybe a team of 4, and everybody's working individually together and no one's really getting anything done. And it's kind of like, instead of all of us lifting this weight together, we're all individually trying to do it and no one's lifting it at all, because everybody's kind of going in opposite directions. We're almost like working against each other. And so learning how to delegate, learning to leverage your strengths, learning to leverage time are some of the most valuable assets that we can do. And then this last piece is something that I learned, and it was really mastering the art of reframing. And, and I think what goes into this is, we have the ability to take responsibility. We have, my employee is the problem. And a reframe is reframing a statement of like, hey, my employee is the problem, to I am the problem. My employee is a solution turns into I am the solution. And when we can master reframing the stories we're telling, the things that might happen to us in our business, whether it be clients, employees, whether it be, just ourselves stuck in our own story. If we can learn to master the art of reframing the story into a more powerful story that gets us what we want. And if we can understand what we want and focus on that, then we can step out of the thought, step out of the story, and we can reframe it into something more powerful that actually gets us what we ultimately want in business and life. It will save us, and eventually, we'll take responsibility, we'll take accountability for everything, because we know that, hey, if I can reframe this, it's sort of like, hey, my employee, they took 5 clients from me. And, I remember, like I talked about, it was a story I had that was like, hey, this client, took all these employees, started their own business, and it would maybe be like, hey, Joe took 5 clients from me, would turn into, I took 5 clients from my business. That's what it would turn to. Because here's the thing is, I gave Joe the clients. You know, I let him have them. I didn't pay attention to what he was doing. And so really, I let 5 clients go because I wasn't paying attention to those 5 clients. I wasn't building the relationship with them. This other person that I expected to do a good job did such a good job that he actually developed a better relationship than I did. And so I'm really just upset that I didn't build a better relationship or bond with them. And so um, I would get into, okay, well, what do I want in this situation? I want to build a better relationship and a better system to where they feel tied more to the business than the individual they're coaching with. And that was a shift that I had to make in my business, was saying, well, listen, do I want people to be tied to Jesse in the business, or do I want people to be tied to the business name, the system, the model, and that was where we made a major change in the delivery model of what we were doing. And being able to reframe a story gives you the ability to do that, because we get clear on what we want, and then we can move forward into that. So these are your top 10 business hacks for business owners. But these are some of the valuable lessons that I've learned along the way, and being able to share these with you guys inside of this group is super powerful. But let me know what your favorite one of these is. If you're listening to the podcast later on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, you can always message me, Jesse at Habit Based Lifestyle, if you have questions, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.